What's going on, beautiful J4 family? Welcome to an edition of Dad's Talk, where dads just kind of converse and share and chop on this beautiful thing called life, but more specifically, this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful space of being a father, whether you're a father to a single child or whether you're a father like myself to 6 children. Hey, want to send a special shout out to all the fathers that are in 2-parent homes. Shout out to you doing your thing along there with your beautiful spouse. Shout out to dads who are not in the house but play caring, providing, engaging kind of lives from afar. And then if you're a single dad where the child lives with you, shout out to you all. This is a program that really wants to acknowledge the beauty that is fatherhood and the importance that is fatherhood in all of our lives. I like to say we'll look at fatherhood in one of 2 ways. Be the father you wish your father was. If he was in the house, he gave you plenty of examples. And as a teenage person coming of age, he probably irritated the hell out of you at certain times. And if you don't like that stuff, when you become a father, take that out. If your dad wasn't there, I'm truly sorry to hear that. But as you thought about fatherhood, as you saw examples of male mentoring, you had an image in your head as to what a good father was. Let that be your guide. Here at J4 Conversations, we have a couple of components. We started off as 2 fathers and 2 sons, chopping it up about life, kind of life's competencies. And then we also elevated to have conversation with future fathers, young men. In fact, we got a gentleman today that does similar things that'll introduce something he's working on. But conversation with future fathers, telling beautiful men to control your own reproduction. Have a child when you are ready. Have a child out of preparation and not passion. And then we also have conversations with fathers, father to father, and we reflect back on the beautiful impact that our fathers have had to us. Shout out to folks in the community. Crystal Slater, how are you doing, sister? Dear friend of mine, good afternoon. D. Clytus in the house, good to see you, fraternity brother. For those of y'all in LinkedIn land, hey, welcome. Truly glad that you're here in Facebook Live. Glad that you're here as well. Or if you're in the YouTube space, again, welcome. In the spirit of shout outs, if you're looking for a community, fathers, Black fathers, if you're looking for a space where men dialogue, ask questions, seek advice, share pride moments, check out on Facebook, Black Fathers and Proud Black Fathers. So why do we do this, y'all? Why do we do this? We do this because in our community, in our beautiful community, 51% of our children are born to single parent homes. 51% of our children are born to single parent homes, and that's a problem, y'all. We have oftentimes the statistic is around 70%. You hear it as high as 80%. Thankfully, that's not the true statistic. It is actually the marital status of mama at the time of delivery. When she goes into the hospitals, the nurse or the doctor will come around and does a survey, and one of the questions is, are you married? And if mom is not married, then it comes down as a single mother. But it does not mean that dad is not there either living in the home or that they're engaged with a plan or intent to be married. But when you extrapolate that data set out, beautiful family, 51% of our babies are born to single parent homes. That's a problem, and it plays itself out in many, many different ways. So we just want to make a small contribution to the robustness that are fathers. The other dynamic that is built into this is that the average percent of single children born into single families is 25%. That means we need to have a cultural conversation. We need to have a conversation with our mates. We need to have a conversation with our village, with our community of men in preparation for fatherhood, managing fatherhood, and then in certain stages of our life being relevant to the fatherhood status of everyone. So glad you guys are here. Hopefully y'all are feeling good today. If you are, put a G into the comments. If you're feeling like you're grooving, if Sunday was good to you, you cleaned your house, you had your music on, your coffee sip was just right, and you're feeling good about the next hour or so as we chop it up on fatherhood, please put a G in the comment. We'd love to know who we're conversing with, who we're chopping with, and who's out there in the YouTube sphere. All right. Without further ado, I want to bring up my first guest, Mr. Samuel D. Mays. Mays, how you doing, brother?
I'm blessed. How are you doing today?
Man, I'm doing well. I'm kicking it on a Sunday with the beautiful people, including you. Mays is a dear, dear friend of mine. We've interacted in many different kind of spaces here in the Phoenix metropolitan area. Mays, introduce yourself, brother. Tell us about your father status and any other projects or programs that you have going on.
Well, again, thanks for having me on. Samuel D. Mays. I also go by one period. Wear a number of different hats. My father status, I'm a father of a wonderful daughter. She's recently 19, so we consider her grown at this point. Mm-hmm. And so, just to mention one of my projects, the Punctuation with One Period radio show, airs South Phoenix Radio every Monday night.
Beautiful. Now, your 19-year-old, is she in the house with her mom, or she got her own spot?
She's still in the house with her mother. We talk about her getting her own spot, and I think every time that she looks at the cost associated with that, that time frame is pushed back a little bit.
Yeah, that independence gets compromised by that rent, right?
Absolutely. As the kids say, it starts to hit a little different.
They say 52% of children over 18 live at home now. And when you look at the age set of 18 to 24, it's 71%. And a lot of that has to do with the COVID space, but it also has to do with economics, right? And, on a previous episode, we asked, does that stunt or stall your child's independence, towards independence if they live at the home for too long? But regardless of the philosophical nature of that question, the reality is that kids are just trying to establish themselves. Hopefully they're stacking bread and paper and making money. So when they do decide to transition, they do so from a more comfortable space. Mays, glad you're here, brother.
Thank you.
All right. Coming on in is Dr. Eccles, Dr. Terry Eccles, representing Cleveland, Ohio. How you doing, sir?
Oh, brother, I'm best. I'm blessed. Thank you for having me.
And more than welcome. Just so you all know, Dr. Eccles popped up on some previous episodes of Dad's Talk, and he contributed, man. And I want to say thank you for that, Dr. Eccles, for kind of showing love and interest in kind of what we're doing. I don't know if you're the only granddad that'll be on the show here, but I definitely look forward to your perspective, brother. Tell the beautiful community about your father status.
Again, Brother Jones, thanks for having me. And again, for the people, man, I just go by Terry. I tell people, hey, my mama didn't name me doctor, so I just go by Terry, man. But again, I'm here in Cleveland and doing my thing, at the county library, trying to make a difference in the lives of the folks. I have 3 children plus a niece that I raised when my brother passed away, so it's like 4 children. I tell people they all graduated from college, and people say, "That's so wonderful, aren't you proud of it?" And I'm like, well, they were really supposed to do it. I put everything in place for them. So, he didn't have no choice. But I'm happy for them. They are doing their thing. And I just want to be able to, give them that continual guidance. And because, I don't know how long I'm going to be here. So I got to be able to tell them so that I'm happy that they can continue to go forth and be able to be productive citizens in society. So that's just my stance. And, they know I'm all about education. The whole thing's about education with me. So hopefully we can keep that moving. And I do have a grandson, little Thaddeus. He's 4 years old. And so I'm trying to continue to have a relationship with him. So I'm exploring some things about myself and have a relationship with my grandson. So.
Yeah. We need to do a show about grandfathers, right?
Right.
I have 6 kids, but I'm not a granddad just yet. But I definitely look forward to the space. I'm going to be an old, crazy granddad,
I told him, I said, don't make me, I'm going to age myself. I said, don't make me be a grandfather. I'm at least 50. And I was going to San Francisco. And my son say, what's up, grandpops? I was like, what you mean by that? Like, I get it. I see what you're saying. So, yeah.
Well, congratulations on that status. And I know you're being humble, but you do mad work in the GED space. And you earned that credential, brother. Thank you so much. All right. Appreciate you being here, Dr. Eccles. I see a Lisa in the chat box. I don't quite know who that is, Lisa. You'll need to connect your microphone and your camera before I can add you to the stream. B. Smith, what's good? Let me know when you do the Granddad Show. I'm ready for that one. Y'all, Brian Smith out of Chicago by way of, I think, North Carolina. Mr. White, Mel White, how are you, sir?
I am great, man. Cannot complain at all.
Mel, thank you so much for joining in. If you could tell the beautiful folks about your father status and then also the projects that you have on the horizon.
All right, I am a father of three beautiful girls and the grandfather of three young men,
Yes, sir.
uh, ages 7, 5, and 3. So I'm always excited about being Papa. That's the
Papa.
best thing in the world, man. Right now, I thought fatherhood was great, but Papa takes the place, man. Them boys love their Papa, and I love them. Right now, I am a boot camp facilitator, boot camp for new dads here in Cleveland, Ohio. I facilitate that on the weekends for dads. Um, I've always been involved with fatherhood programs throughout everything. I've done a prevention fatherhood program here for our young high school students. I also now is establishing a parenting class in the high school that I work at, so that we can have that conversation with these young folks that are getting pregnant much too early in life. Um, and I'm currently working on a program called Frat Dads, Fraternity for Dads, that will be coming your way, and hopefully I will have it launched on Father's Day this year. And it's just bringing dads together to talk to them about the developmental ages and stages of their children. My first degree is in early childhood education, so I wanted to bring that back full circle and have these dads understand the importance of what milestones their kids reach from birth to 5, what some of those great moments that you can talk about. And also talking to them about self-care, the importance of mental health, the importance of making sure that your tank is full before you can do anything else. And then last but not least, talking to them about how to establish that relationship with that significant other, if you're with them or not. So those are the very basic components that I'll be working on, and then just giving them wraparound services like with Terry here, helping them if they haven't gotten a GED, let's get you in class. If you need to work, let's get you to work. So those will be some other wraparound services that we'll involve with. Also launched a book called Breaking the Cycles of Abandonment. I Am Not My Father. That is on Amazon. And we talk about, we go through my childhood, we go through my life. Once you read the book, you know all about me.
No, that's powerful, man. Much respect and praises for your direct on the ground work with men. I just want to underscore something that Mel talked about, and you all can chime in at any way, is the developmental phases of children, right? That your 5-year-old is not the same developmentally as the 10-year when he's 10. Your 15-year-old is vastly different than when he's 10. And also, you could add 5-year increments to that. But, a toddler, infant, toddler, adolescence, puberty, teenager, young adult, those are all things that as fathers, we definitely need to be mindful of, because it ought to shape how we spend time and how we raise them and how we talk to them. I've coined the age set of 15 to 22 roughly as the warrior class, where a person is very physically centered, their peer group is heavily on their mind, relationships standing among men and boys in terms of rank order are critical sort of hyper associations that the age set has. And so if y'all can definitely get Mel's book there to talk about developmental phases, it'll help you when you look at that beautiful child in front of you, knowing that 3 is different than 8, 8 is different than 14. Mel, would you add anything to that?
Definitely. Like I said, my first love was early childhood education. Not having a dad in the house is what prompted me to go into that field, knowing that it wasn't a very popular field for men, let alone a brother. But I stuck with it. Got a degree in early childhood, spent 25 years teaching preschool. Loved every minute of it. Each one of my daughters had an opportunity to be in school with me their first 5 years. So that was a great experience. And just knowing the different stages and ages that you really need to get involved with. That 3 to 5 is crucial, man. And just 90% of the kids' learning comes from that crucial stage.
Right. And for those listening in, that 3 to 5 is critical. And I don't want to put words into Mel's mouth, but vocabulary accumulation, right? One of the acts of parenting is to read to your child, right? You get the age appropriate books, or maybe even a book a little step above, so you can kind of stretch their their sense of words and force them to understand syntax and pictures association. So it isn't just time well spent with the child. It is that, but you're actually building out their vocabulary, and there's a correlation between a number of words that they know and how they do in education and even life. So welcome, beautiful folks. Y'all got to say the shout out to the greatest human being alive. That's Hugh Jones. What's up, granddaddy? You know, we had Paul, we got Papa Hugh. I don't know what you call yourself, Dr. Eccles, but we got unique names for granddaddies, right? But shout out to my dad, always in the house. Great to see you. Let's go ahead and get started. Maze, tell me, man, you know, your child is 19 now, a young lady, but if you can reflect back, what is the best thing for you about being a father? Maze, you're on mute.
You mentioned different stages of development. It's interesting, that question. It changes and evolves over time, right? When she was little, you know, just that cuddle, snuggle, hug time, you know, that's all she needed was, quote, daddy. Now that she's grown, one of the things I appreciate most is being able to have more mature and reflective conversations with her. You know, now I can ask her things about, well, you know, I can ask her that same question. What did you appreciate about me as a father in different phases of her life? So definitely the ability to share in her current growth is probably most appreciative right now.
Hey, did it ever trip you out of how when they talk to you like an adult and they come with some concepts and some philosophy and you're like, dang, right? Who is this beautiful young person, this young intellect and scholar in front of me? Did you have any moments like that?
Absolutely. And, you know, again, it's funny because it makes you question, like, did that come from me, or like, where you get that from? Right. You either take credit for it or you question, like, well, dang, my kid might be smarter than me at this point.
Wow. No doubt, man. Beautiful memories. Dr. Eccles, your children are out of the house, but looking back, kind of what do you remember fondly?
I can say, you know, I just want to piggyback a little bit on what Brother Mays was saying. For me, it was really seeing them become adults, right? So, you know, it's always the little girl and she got the little beads in her hair, right? And you see her as a little kid, and she's 7, and then she's 9, and she's 11, and she started becoming her own person. My son, you know, he played football at a pretty prestigious place here, and to see him become his own man, I was like, oh, well, yeah, I don't have to take the garbage out no more, because, you know, these some grown people now, and you know, you gotta remember, I'm that person that always like, hey, look, I'm gonna be your father. I don't care what your friends on the street say, but they like, hey, Dad, I got my own opinion. And I think back, I said, when I was growing up, I'm gonna age myself older than all y'all. You know, me a male. I say, when I was growing up, man, I ain't have no opinion. Then nobody asked me my opinion didn't matter. Okay, so now I get into these conversations like Brother Mays was saying. I asked my daughter something. She's like, Dad, you need to know this. I was like, oh, okay. I guess I didn't know that about myself and stuff. So it's just really just seeing them become their own person, right? Having their own political views. And like, oh, really? Like, Dad, these are the things that you need to know. And it's just, that whole thing about the fatherhood thing is just such a funny thing. I just hate to kind of go on about that, but it's just really funny. Just seeing them become their own person, become their own adult. And then there's some things they can just say, no, I'm not going to do that because I'm 24 years old. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm sorry. My bad.
Yeah, so you know, Doc, you're bringing up a phenomena about, you know, what it meant for you to be a son to a parent versus your children to you, sort of in the modern era. I want to explore that a little bit more, but first let me ask Mel, same question, man. What do you remember fondly in the space of fatherhood?
Oh man, just spending that time sitting in Girl Scout troops, sitting you know, going to piano lessons, getting my nails done. And it's so funny, you know, all 3 of my daughters are still very active in terms of wanting to spend that time with their dad. And that just cracks me up. I tell my wife, I guess we're still the cool parents because the 2 oldest are almost 30 and the youngest is 20. And they still vibe for that time with me. I just went to lunch with the oldest the other day because she was jealous that I've been hanging out with the youngest one
Yeah.
a little bit more. So I took her to lunch the other day. Then the other one, she lives in Columbus. That's where we're just coming back from today, hanging out with her because she just got ready to purchase her first new house and she's getting ready to get married. And so just knowing that I played an intricate role in that, and that they appreciate the role of dad in having girls hit different, man.
Yeah.
I was sitting there, what was that, Thursday night, I'm sitting there with a wig on my head because my daughter needed to pluck her wig and she didn't have her wig head. So dad had to sit there and be the model while she straightened it
Wow.
out, and why, and that's my ride or die, the youngest one. I'll sit up there and I'll throw a rinse in her hair, or do what you got to do, and it doesn't change from when they were little. You catch those moments and you just reflect back from when they were maybe 3 or 4. And now I'm looking at her at 20 and she's making her own decisions and driving, and it just makes you just humble and
Yeah.
appreciative of the things that I didn't have, but I made sure because I didn't have them, that was going to be my blueprint to fatherhood.
Hey, Brother Jones, let me just piggyback off Mel. Me and Mel go way back. And we worked at community college, Tri-C up in Cleveland. And so it's funny because when you that dad that you are intimately involved, right? You running around like, hey, I gotta go pick my son up from softball, and my daughter got to dance, and I gotta go to this. And so you see yourself running around like that. So I think that's a very, very good point, Mel, because I just remember having to go up to the Catholic school, going up to St. Ignatius. I got to go to a science fair, but then I got to be back for recital, and I got to run over here. And when you go in the room, no shade against the other dad, but when you the only dad, African American, that's in PTA, they're like, what you doing in PTA? It's like, I'm looking around. I go play. I tell my daughter, I say, where the other dads at? I'm like looking for them. Where the rest of the dads at? So that's just interesting for me.
It's a phenomenon, the absence of dads in the home, but also perhaps the absence of dads in very intimate spaces, that might historically, stereotypically be relegated from mothers. But, when I was trying to figure out what it meant to be a father, I certainly had my dad as an example. But one thing that became tangible, and I needed tangible things, was that to be present, right? Your kids have so many activities, from doctor's appointments to games to school activities and events. And I said, at least if I can physically be present, at least I am, present, visible in the moment, applauding, offering feedback, encouraging. And even though I did not have a blueprint, I knew that presence was certainly probably chapter 1. And to answer my own question, that is where I find my greatest joy, is watching them do what they do with exuberance, with enthusiasm, with a sense of ownership, and then to watch them advance and grow in their particular spaces. I have anywhere from a athlete to an opera singer of all things, to a PhD daughter. And it's just been a pure joy, man. It's been a pure joy to watch them do their thing, man. Beautiful. Let's build on what you said, Dr. Eccles, about your child were not like yourself. In what ways is today's generation, and I know we range in age from 19 to mid 30s, in what ways are they perhaps different than us? And in what ways is that good or problematic?
I think that a lot of ways that they're different than us is that, and it's going to sound a little awkward, a little clunky, but this is kind of a respect thing. When I say that, I'm not saying that our kids are disrespectful. What I'm saying is that a lot of us, we have those traditional, we got some situations, we got some moms that's raising kids and they came from down south during the second great migration, right? So we just did whatever mom told you, whatever big mom, Medea, grandma, whatever she said, you just did it. Today, kids, young people, I don't say kids, young folks, they have their own opinion. They're their own person. And so you find yourself negotiating these conversations sometimes. It's like, well, I tell my son, I used to tell him when he would go out with girls and I say, hey, I wouldn't do that if I was you, but I'm not you. You got to figure that out, man. I'm not you. So, the aftermath, don't come to me saying, Dad, I messed up. Well, obviously I'm gonna still be there, even though you messed up. But I'm just trying to tell you. I guess my point is that we have to negotiate those conversations. And I think when we were growing up, for a lot of us, Brother Mays, I'm not sure how old you are, but when we were growing up, we didn't have that room to negotiate. We didn't have a mediator come in and negotiate for us. These folks, they're highly educated, they're technologically savvy, they know how to get what they want, and they know how to negotiate those conversations. So we have to be able to give a little bit, where before we just did what we was told to do. There was no negotiation.
And I want to get to Mays and Mel, but man, first time my kids kind of put a contradictory message or opinion, man, Mays, I was like, what am I going to do with this? What? Mays, I was like, what? You know, I found it particularly in around identity politics, notions of capitalism, a sense of entrepreneurship, which I have mad respect for. But when my 17-year-old came in, Mel, with that vocabulary and started educating me on all different kind of intersectionality, I didn't know how to feel about that, man. I didn't know how to feel about that. Mays, any difference in your 19-year-old from your 19-year-oldness?
Absolutely. And I'm listening to Dr. Eccles share that about the context. I think it's interesting because I would almost want to explore that a whole lot, the differences in the generational upbringing within the context of everything else evolving, right? Because had we had access to the technology that our kids or the young people do now, would we be different, or is their current status just an example, right, of the environment they have come up in? But to answer the question more directly, I can remember having discussion. I can remember the time, like you said, the first time my daughter kind of challenged me, other than a quote kid acting out,
right.
I had to, like you said, I had to have that response, like, I don't know if you're ever going to be old enough, right?
Right.
And then I had to follow that up with a commitment, like, I love you, but I am still the father that will do what is required because I care. And then a few later, as she got closer to adulthood, just the way that she can articulate her thoughts and almost defend her point of view in a way that makes me respect, the woman that she has become and her opinions, versus, do as dad says. Well, she's like, well, I'm hearing you, but hear what I'm saying. I'm like, oh, okay. And of course, that's the problem, because that's what we want is critical thinkers, not people that compare what we do and say.
I think it's critical that we support that, because I do think it'll make them more ready for the world, but also, more critical, self-examining, and perhaps a change agent for, taking the baton of previous generations. But it is a little unsettling. I think there was a certain kind of fatherhood arrogance in knowing that you were kind of, the old man, the big dog, sort of quasi-infallible. And your kids knew probably where you were wrong, but maybe they just didn't articulate it. That wasn't the space. And you just sat there in your ignorance, feeling good and lofty about yourself, right? But now they're more vocal and more verbal. And, are we denying the old man his little illusion of grandeur stature? I don't know. Male thoughts?
For me, I think is that lack of, they don't have fear. Like I stayed in my little box. I didn't venture too far away from moms. My girls have no fear, man. They'll travel to another country,
yep,
and by themselves. Or my middle daughter, she went to Ohio State, graduated, decided to stay down there, and didn't think about, like, hey, I'm here by myself, but I'll figure it out. You gave me the tools, now let me go. Right. Where I didn't, I was a little nervous to leave that safe zone, that area where, and I noticed I don't know if it's the technology or what we instilled in them, but man, these girls will just roll the hell out. And I'm like, where you going? Oh, we're flying out to California today. What's in California? Hey, we just going. Never been there. Just want to go. Or we're going to Costa Rica. Or we're going to backpack across Europe. What the? So,
hey, Mel, look, my daughter, she lives in Chicago, and I told her, I said, her name is Terry Eccles too, and I said, hey, Terry, we got some rules. Now, I know you're a grown woman, but I don't want you leaving that state of Illinois without me knowing. You can go. Yeah. I called her and said, where you at? Oh, Dad, I'm in Nashville. I said, hey, I thought we had an arrangement. You weren't supposed to leave a state without me knowing. But the funny part, what you said, Mel, is that our kids, they believe that if you're there, you're this superhero. I tell people all that my daughter thought I was 9 foot tall and fireproof because we would be like, my dad can do anything. That building, he just push it out the way. So one day she was at grad school in South Alabama and she wasn't feeling well. And she said, Dad, I need you to come get me. I'm in Ohio. She in Mobile. I flew out in about 6 hours. I was at the airport in New Orleans and I'm here. Come get me. They know that. They depend on that. They said, my dad will come.
Right. Hey, isn't that a good feeling, man? For them to know, no matter where they are, no matter what's going on, man. My daughter called me to kill a damn spider one day. It was 2:00 in the morning. I had to drive over to her house and kill a spider before she came out the bathroom.
Daddy's girl.
I'm just like, man. But when we make that commitment, when I held her in my arm and I promised her that I would never abandon her, that I would always be there, and to be able to hold that feeling and be true with it, that's an amazing feeling. And to look in their eyes and know that they know that unless I'm 6 feet under, I'm just a call away.
Man, when you get those calls from your seeds, and it's whether it's moments of joy, praise, or fear, right? I recall a very fearful conversation, but it just sort of pulls at you. But the blessing is that they made that call, and that of all the things that are unpredictable and uncertain at their life, given their stage, they know one thing is reliable, and that their parents, right, their mother and their father, will drop everything to be of aid and service to them. Powerful, y'all. Hey, we are going to get into our question section. Dad's Talk is preceded by men who are a part of the panel, in most instances sharing some questions that they want us to explore. This is also the opportunity for you all listening in. And by the way, thank you for Facebook Live, YouTube, LinkedIn. Please head over to YouTube, J4 Conversations. Give us a like on this, comment, subscribe. It helps us grow and have connection with more and more folks who perhaps can benefit from it. So if you have a question, this will be a time to put it in the chat and just shout out. Love to know where you're watching from and your father status and where you're from, and B and Pops and Don and Crystal. Thank you all for being here. So to begin us off, I'd like to ask the first question. How do men remain active in their child's life if the mother and the father are no longer in a relationship? What are some thoughts or strategies that we can share from personal experience? I've been married twice. My first wife and I have a daughter, so I'm familiar with that. And then my current wife and I now have 5 kids together. But what are you guys' thoughts or reactions on how can you remain connected and intimately in your child's life? Anyone? Let me go with Mays.
I was actually thinking about that type of question, that listening to you fathers speak. I believe it requires a great deal of intentionality, because, and speaking, get prefaced. So my child's mother and I separated very early in my child's life. So the idea of the custodial parent was very prevalent throughout. And it just requires a different headspace as far as how you prioritize and balance everything in your life when it comes to prioritizing and needing to share that time with your child. You guys mentioned, doing dance class, just quality time, doing school functions and stuff like that. So there's a great deal of planning that, and, you know, as well as negotiating, because not only are you dealing with, you know, spending that time with your child, you have to negotiate everything around that when it comes to the, you know, the mother of the child or the partner. So it's a lot of mitigating.
Yeah. So Mays, are you underscoring that your capacity to be engaged, to have intimate connection, is tied to the type of relationship you have with the mother? Is there a correlation there?
There definitely is, because you know, obviously there's times where, you know, the mother could do some things that would prevent that time, but I would think that would come second, or at least in, you know, my anecdotal experience, I think that comes second to the father's mentality. Because if you understand those things, you know, because I'm thinking back, you know, some different situations. If you go into the negotiation or the idea of I want to spend time with my child, if you go into that with a certain mentality, you can eradicate some of the things that the mother might do, right? So, you know, again, looking back, if there's a different sense of maturity, a different prioritization, you know, a lot of things can and could have been done.
Right. And you're also putting the success of your relationship with your child, you're putting that on you, right? You know, when you have two sentient beings, that's always navigated and negotiated. But if you take a sense of my responsibility to my child, I'm going to take the bulk of the ownership of that. And so I'm going to go into realizing that the connection to the child is also connected to some stable, negotiated mutuality with the maternal figure. Yeah. A lot of times men can feel controlled by that. They can feel manipulated and vulnerable to that. And so they reject that, right? And in that process, which can be understandable, they're also compromising relationship to the baby. Mel, let me go to you. Your thoughts.
Yeah, I totally agree with Mace. But I take it one step further. I know when I talk with my dads, some of my young dads in high school, first thing I tell them, establish who you are. Establish paternity. Establish child support. Don't wait for somebody to tie you to child support. Go establish things yourself. And therefore your rights and your responsibilities are a little bit more set in stone, because also often sometimes as mothers and fathers, we can act as gatekeepers. And when we're the gatekeeper, we control the keys. And sometimes it's not directly related to, am I a good father, but was I a no good boyfriend or no good husband? And sometimes we get punished for those things, not necessarily based on fatherhood, but based on some things that I may have done to hurt you. And therefore my relationship with my child suffers behind that. So if we establish these things early in life, and then we know, okay, this is going to be my responsibility. These are my time frames. These are the things that I can do, and no one can take those things away from me. Those are the approaches that I tell my dads to do, just as a safety precaution. Because as May say, everything has to be negotiated. And you have to have a relationship, and I hope it's always a respectful relationship with that partner or that ex-partner, so that we understand what's the most important thing here. It's not whether or not we love each other or like each other. How do we co-parent? How does that look for us as parents? What are we going to agree on? How are we going to raise this child in different households? Are we going to have some mutual things that this child is going to do, whether they're in my house or your house? How do we establish these things moving forward so that we raise the best child that we can raise, whether or not we're in each other's lives or not?
Man, that's so powerful. When you got two grown human beings who produced a child, perhaps they thought things were going to be way different than they are. Maybe one person felt wronged and they're holding on to that wrong, even though they're the gatekeeper in some instance to the access to the child. This is not a relationship show, and I want to stay true to that. I want to keep it in the father space. But fathers, if you do find yourself no longer physically in the home, man, consult with your community, consult with your tribe, let someone speak some calmness into you, let some time pass from your high frustration, regroup, work on your vocabulary, how you're going to approach this, and reinitiate, man. Maybe go to a private space or somewhere where civility can occur, and try to bypass whatever the tension is between you and the former partner towards a broader aim, and that's for men to be in the life physically of your children. Thank you, Maze and Mel. Doc, what you think?
I mean, you know what, man? These two guys, they so intelligent, man. It's hard for me to follow that up because they summed up everything for me. But I'll just add a little third little wheel to that, is that it's about the commitment. It's the commitment because, like you said, you decided, and however that came out, you're gonna, connect with this person, and the result of it was another human being. So you got to say, I'm committed to this. Now it's gonna be awkward, and Mel knows about me, Brother Joe. I kind of shoot from the hip, man. So I talk from a kind of an urban perspective. Sometimes, you get in that relationship, and you and her don't see eye to eye. That don't mean that you just give up being a father. It just means that we, like Mel said, we got to continue to negotiate this arrangement, and I'm not going to let you steal my thunder. I'm not going to let you badmouth me to my child. If I have to go, like Mel said, and get counsel and say, these are the steps, these are the measures that I can take so that I can be legally in this child's life without you doing whatever you're doing. Now, I'm kind of putting it, I know we say it's not about relationships, I'm kind of putting it like the female always do bad stuff to the guy. No, it worked both ways. It's a two-way street. Stuff happen like that. But the point I'm making is just that it's you remaining true to that commitment of saying, I don't care, if you seeing somebody else or you go get married, I'm still little John's father, and I'm going to still come pick him up. I'm going to still do this. We don't got to be cool, but he's still my child. And I think that's what that commitment part is that we can never overlook that. Sometimes we get mad and say, well, she dated Mike, so hey, it ain't about that. It ain't about Mike. It's about the baby that y'all made. So you just got to be able to have Mel again, Maze, that maturity. Maze mentioned that maturity level to say, I'm above this. I'm above this. I'm gonna be a mature adult. I'm turning into a man. That's what Mel be teaching. Turning into a, as they say, a whole man or full man. And I'm gonna act accordingly. I'm not gonna react. I'm not gonna get mad and slash your tires because you're going out with Mike. You know what I'm saying? We're gonna do things the right way. So I would just say that commitment. You got to remain true to that commitment.
Yeah, we can't get caught up in our immediate emotions, which is understandable when we're trying to raise a future man and daughter and woman, right? So we got to temper the immediate in preparation for the long term. Powerful. Beautiful J4 community. Thank you guys for being here. If you have questions or comments, please feel free to throw them in these boxes. Gentlemen, let's move to sports. Sports is a dominant theme within the African-American community. Some would argue problematically, some would argue understandably. We all, as parents, wanted to get our children involved in things beyond sports as well, because it's a form of engagement, it's a form of socialization, it's also a form of structural, having things to do with their time to complement the house roles and routine as well as educational spaces. But I want to shift now to sports and our children. What are the pros and cons of sports, particularly when dads can sometimes act a fool, y'all, in trying to live vicariously? I'm speaking for myself. I wanted to be an NBA guy, but I did not have the skills, Maze. And so I put my kids in basketball, and I was just looking for it. I was looking for it. And sometimes I might have been too emotional. So let's talk about that. We'll start with, let me start with Dr. Echols. We'll go Mel and then Maze. What are your thoughts in the space of sport, potential pros and cons that fathers need to be mindful of?
Great question. Me, I'm a sports guy. I'm a former collegiate coach, coach basketball. And I really infused that in my children. I wanted them to get involved, and I wanted them to play sports, and my sons and daughter. And, my sons, they gravitated to it. And I was like, cool, because I thought it was about building that teamwork, having that discipline, understanding the people are dependent on you. And so I get to my daughter and like, all right, Terry, I want you to play basketball. I was like, Dad, I'm going to play rugby. And I was like, I don't even know all the rules to rugby. I don't even know what you're supposed to do. And so she did it for the socialization. That kid is running around like, are you guys thirsty? I can get a towel, that type of kid. Right. I was like, whatever work, man. If that work, and it just shows her to build that camaraderie and that teamwork. However, though, I will say, like you said, vicariously, again, Mel know me well. My son was a high profile athlete in Greater Cleveland, and I find myself chasing him around. We at the mall one day, and a little kid walk up to him like that Mean Joe Green Pepsi commercial and pulled on his jersey and said, "Hey, aren't you number 10 for Glenville?" And I'm like, "Wait a minute, I'm the coach. This just they were talking to him." And I was like, "Damn, he just superseded me." So I'm trying to live through him vicariously and be his agent, and I'm on his bag, and I'm like, man, just do what you want to do. Like, as long as it got him through college, for me, he went on a full scholarship and played football and stuff. I was happy about that. But it did build that structure. It did build that teamwork. It did discipline him because he could have been doing some other things out in the street. You know what I'm saying? So I would just leave it at that, though.
Right. And if they're doing good things and old man gets a little warm and fuzzy and lives vicariously, get that pride moment, right? Even though we hadn't shot a ball, bowled a bowling ball, swung a bat, but hey, we produced and we ought to have some fun through them. All right, Mel, your thoughts, pros and cons of sport.
I mean, I think sports is a great thing. It does teach you teamwork and leadership and all of those great attributes, man. And I'm like Terry, man. I had 2 out of the 3 girls that played. The middle daughter, she plays volleyball, and but she got a bad attitude, man. She's so damn competitive. It's crazy. You got to kind of usher her off. She the one that won't shake your hand when she lose. But the youngest daughter, man, that was my dream girl there. She played basketball like her dad. First time I saw her post somebody up, I'm hollering in the stands, and she averaging about 4-5 blocks. And so she goes to high school and she's playing varsity in high school. And I'm like, yes. Then she had a bad coach. So she stopped playing after 10th grade. And I was devastated. I thought I had got cut from the team. She decided she wanted to go and be an actress. And so she started getting into school plays and doing other things. And I mean, she was great at that too. She was the first African-American female to star in a play at that school in the whole history of her high school to get a leading role. So I was proud of her of that, but man, I missed her running track and playing basketball because that was my time to shine. And I realized I had to take a step back. It wasn't about me. What are you going to do? And whatever you're going to do, then I'm going to support it. But sports played a good role in helping her find what she liked and didn't like, regardless of what I liked.
Right.
Hey, Mel, before we go to Brother Mays, Mel, funny thing, here it is. I'm this high-profile women's college basketball coach. I'm thinking, okay, my daughter gonna play. I'm a coach her. She left-handed. I'm excited about that. She's like, Dad, you yell too much. I ain't playing for you because you yell too much. My feelings hurt. I'm like, I yell too much. Okay, go ahead. That's fine.
But that's tough for the seeds, when they got dad in the house and there's one role there, and then dad pops up in the sports space and like, I got enough of dad, right? But then dad's taking a different tone and trying to be somewhat neutral and equal at the same time, show favoritism at the same time. But I can understand how the babies would want to kind of get away from us. Living vicariously through your children, I think maybe prior to this show, I would think that maybe that wasn't the best thing, and within boundaries, of course. But no, right? That's kind of old man stuff, right? That's dad stuff. If y'all are in the chat, do you think living vicariously through your children can be a healthy thing within reason, y'all? Within reason. I ain't talking about forcing them to do some stuff. Big Mays, talk to us. The pros and cons of sports from your vantage point.
Well, first off, I remember you talked about your own basketball skills. I can remember a basketball game. it was the grown adult men versus some high school students.
Oh my God.
a lot of our skills were called into question that day.
Yes, y'all. The 16-year-olds whooped us down. We hung with them, Mel. We were right there for about 2 minutes, and they were playing press, sprint, no threes, everything layup. Oh man, we balled with them for like 2 minutes. The remaining quarter and a half and the second half, you talk about heart, chest bumping. Oh my goodness, Mays. I remember, brother. That was a horrible day.
Yes, sir. So initially, I think early on, a lot of us parents choose to get our kids enrolled in sports out of tradition. You know, a lot of us play sports in high school or, you know, beyond. So it's kind of like, this is what I did, so let me get you into, you know, this as well. You guys mentioned also it helps children become adjusted or more well adjusted. It helps them become better socialized. And it's also a bonding experience, like you guys mentioned. Also, I have my daughter in soccer. So like, okay, we can go to the games together. We can, you know, practice afterwards. We can do that type of stuff until she got, you know, in my experience, my daughter got older and said, nah, I'm not really interested in that. We tried dance a little bit later. But again, there's a lot of independence, especially with her growing up outside of my household. So she let me know that sports wasn't necessarily her thing. Right. But you talked about some of the pros and cons. I think when it comes to living vicariously, also, I think a lot of us as parents, specifically Black and brown folk, still trying to hit the lottery. Like you mentioned jokingly, but I think a lot of the times we're like, man, if I can get, you know, however many kids I get, if I can get one to make it, you know, we good. Or not even at the pro level, we're talking about college. Like, I know I can't pay for college, so you got to get a sports scholarship. So I think, you know, my perspective, looking at it through that lens, I think it can put a lot of pressure comes with that. And I think sometimes, and I've spoken with different parents on my end through the work that I do. I think it can looking at it through that lens, can understand that there's a pressure that's associated with having our kids in sports, and that aside from us being the coach ourselves, just that pressure can put a strain on the parent-child relationship.
Yeah, no doubt, Maze. You're speaking mad science. Hey, y'all, we got to pause here a moment. We've made J4 conversation history. This gentleman that you all see with the shiny bald head and sharp suit, that is the lead attorney. The lead attorney has a YouTube channel that is a premiere. It's one of the highest level YouTube channels. He does a series of conversations, a significant focus on men, but he also talks about it from the legal side. He's a 20-year attorney. He is also perhaps what I call him the Pied Piper of sort of Black male content, is because he allows people to come up to talk about what they do, free promotions, but at the same time to participate and have added dialogue to whatever the subject is at hand. As a 20-year attorney, recently retired, he is not about himself. He is about advancing in the YouTube space and having men and women become comfortable with the technology. He offers a number of courses to include consultation. I recently had a consultation with the lead attorney, and the brother, he kind of challenged me. He called me in a fishbowl, meaning I need to get a little bigger, need to expand a little bit, but he gave me a necessary kick. And that's what we as men need. I had not met the brother before that, but he gave me honesty. He gave me critique from a space of support. And Brother Lee, thank you so much for what you're doing, what you did for me personally, and for stopping by, brother. I'm very surprised to see you, and very glad to see you all. The lead attorney, the one and only. He says, one day I'm gonna get some kids, and then I'll be able to join the conversation. Lead, I'm gonna put this drop in here just in case. I don't know if you have a moment, but brother, we talk about a number of things to include future fatherhood, but perhaps you have some thoughts on the subject itself around the pros and cons of sport. I work in the athletic space, y'all, and when sport becomes obsessive for families, when sport becomes a means by which families change their familial circumstances, I understand the dynamic. I also understand the illusion when you think your child can compete at the highest level, but you're lying to yourself. Also understand when you see your child have a certain kind of dexterity and agility, and you say, we might have something here, and you begin to pursue it. But there are very small percentages of human beings that will find themselves in D1 spaces, let alone Big 5 spaces where I have the pleasure of working. If you get to a D1 Big 5 space, it is very likely that you could possibly have a professional kind of experience. But imagine the burden, imagine the toll, imagine the psychological immensity that we put on our children to simply take on the responsibility at a young age as potentially changing the trajectory of a familial circumstance. So as we seek to support our beautiful seeds, we got to do it in a way that does not pressurize and put a sort of burden upon a young person's mindset and literal back, because that's not theirs to shoulder at that particular moment. And so as fathers and as mothers, we want to support them, but we got to check our attitude and what our personal aim is. It's one thing to live vicariously, men, but it's one thing to live problematically through our children. Thoughts on that?
Brother Jones, let me just chime in right there, right quick. Obviously coming from an athletic space as well, you got to think about what you're saying is so right, because we think about it, it's particularly with our daughters. Daughters, like Mel said, you get a daughter that has a bad experience with a coach, and then she won't play no more. So when you see that, it's particularly in women's sports, a lot more of them don't go on and play. They don't go, because you know what? Sports have changed. Now we play, right? We play baseball, then we play basketball, then we play football. We just did it all year round. They don't do it like that no more, right? So you got to be dedicated to something. You got to go to speed strength. You got to go travel team. And so girls are like, I just want to hang out with my friends at the mall. I don't want to keep just doing this basketball all year round. And so that's why they get there and say, you put that pressure on them to say, yeah, but University of Arizona State is calling you. I ain't that interested. I don't want this coach hollering at me. I don't want them yelling. I ain't doing sprints. I just want to hang out with my friends. So you get that. Yeah.
No, very powerful. Very powerful. All right, let's move to our second question, if that's cool with everybody. All right. I'm gonna go with this one. It's related to culture. Are there traditions or specific things to culture, in this case, Blackness, or if you have an ethnic culture built within Blackness, that you're instilling in your children? And how do you get them to carry those cultural traditions forward? So are you being intentional or deliberate around how you're educating your children culturally? And then the second part is, how do we get them to carry that forward if they so desire? Who'd like to get in on that? Go ahead, Doc.
I think I just do it the inverse of what you said, because it's about pride, particularly as it relates to African Americans. My son is biracial. However, it was uber important for me to let him understand, hey, brother, I grew up in these projects down here. I know you live out here in the suburbs. I grew up in the hood down here, and we had a whole bunch of food stamps because it was about 6 of us. And so, you break it down like that and make him understand, this is where your cousin from. Some of them was using some drugs, some of them wasn't. Like I said, I just try to keep it real, but I think it's just important that I made sure that he understood his Blackness. So I don't want to get into the nuts and bolts about race, but I can just say from my own personal experience, my son sees himself as a Black man. He don't see himself as biracial, because you think about it, we have a generation of folk that are now biracial, and they're caught in between. Am I too white for these folks? Am I too dark for these folks? Where do I fit? And so that's really an interesting dynamic that we have. But I would just say it's about making sure that he understands that pride and where we came from, and our struggle and our migration, and the great philanthropy and the inventions that we've made and contributions that we made to society, for him to understand that, and then he can be prideful. So that's just my own personal take on that.
No, beautiful. Don Clyder says, excellence. That is certainly associated with culture. Mays, your thoughts? Do you want to add anything to that? The transmission and perpetuation of culture?
Yeah, it's such a complex concept. Because I'm thinking, like, in general, as well as my own experience, right? You have to, in order to pass down something as a father, you have to embody that. You have to acquire it, obtain it, and embody it first, right?
Yourself, right? Yourself.
Right, exactly. If I can, correlate it to being a teacher in the classroom, I think all you fellas right here can relate. It's hard to teach a lesson if you have to keep looking at the book to figure out the equation yourself, right? So I think first, and especially like you mentioned, Dr. Echols, we're talking about, our Black culture. I think we have to get to a place of a certain place of awareness first, before we can begin to try to relay those things or transition those things, impart those things. And then at the same time, like you mentioned, younger generations don't necessarily have the same viewpoint when it comes to Black pride, Black power. Their circumstances are a lot different. You told your story. I can remember taking my daughter to the homeless shelter that's here in Phoenix, because she's so far removed, pros and cons, right? She's so far removed from that experience, but I could be there on a daily basis. So I took her to the local shelter to try to give her some of that exposure. Maybe one of the reasons why she is the way she is today, because she didn't really appreciate that the way in which I would appreciate it. But I think to summarize what my thought is, I think first we have to understand what our own appreciation and understanding level is of whatever cultural tradition we're trying to teach.
Did we get froze, or can you hear me?
I think Jones is on mute.
My bad, gentlemen. My bad. What they call it, streaming struggles. My bad. For those of you just joining us, welcome. We're talking about the transmission of culture, but in order to do that, to transmit something must mean we have something to transmit. Not for today's discussion at some point, but is Blackness a salient identity today? Is Blackness as a salient, dominant identity today? If a person born 18 years ago that's on the dawn of adulthood, does the cultural pressures, the cultural norms, the cultural questions, the cultural landscape, does it even ask the question loudly, what does it mean to be Black? I think it asks about social justice. Where are you at in activism? Where are you at on things of equity? Where are you at on intersectionality? Where are you at on trans kinds of issues? But the question of, am I even interested in a Blackness, seems to be a very interesting kind of question. But to your point, Mays, yes. And as fathers, whether you're fathers of young children or older children, if you think culture is important, but you yourself don't feel particularly vetted in culture, perhaps that's an opportunity for some self knowledge, some self-learning, and joining some communities where culture is predominant and prevalent, and that you can then be in a better, more comfortable space as you pass the information on. Beautiful. Talk to us, Mel. Talk to us.
I think for me, it was being deliberate. Deliberate in where we live, deliberate in the things that we taught our young ladies about becoming young ladies. Financially, my wife and I could have probably lived wherever we wanted to live, but we chose to live in the neighborhoods in which we grew up in.
Yeah. And
we showed them the culture. We let them become aware that this is a drug deal. This is what gunshots sound like. These are things, because this is where dad still works at. This is where mom still works at. She's at the local hospital. Dad's in the local high schools, in the local colleges. This is where we grew up. These are the things that we give back. But then we also took them outside of our cultures. We took them and let them explore other areas of different race and different value systems and things of that nature. Then we allowed them to make their own decisions. We made sure that they understood that Black was beautiful. You are beautiful no matter what it is that you try to do, no matter what you're going to do in life. My middle daughter is engaged to a Vietnamese young man. But she's strong in her identity. She accepts his she accepts his culture, and they embraced each other, and now they're planning to be married in September. But she knows who she is as a person, and she doesn't wonder about those things. And the same thing with my other daughters, things that we didn't embrace, things that grandma would not allow us to bring home, they identify with. Yeah. They identify with other cultures. It's nothing for them to go from an all Black group of friends to a very diverse group of friends, and each one lends and offers something different to who they are as a person. And so I'm proud of them of that, because I think that's something that shows the growth and the technology and the things that we did not have. a lot of times I was capsized into this is who you grew up with. This is all you know. I didn't hang around other cultures and race until I got to college. That was the first time I was around somebody that didn't look like me on a regular basis. And my girls have been exposed to it early in life, and the things that they've done with that, but still ensured of who they are as women, as Black women, and I'm proud of that.
Hey Mel, this was a real thing. I do want to piggyback real fast. You know, when we were growing up, right, we were in school, we learned about Philip Randolph, Sojourner Truth, Harriet Tubman, Benjamin Banneker, Crispus Attucks, all these things. Today, the kids not really being taught that. They don't really know about it because it's not that important to them in that way. Their friends are important to them. So I would say this, you know, we take our kids and we say, hey, you want to go to Disney, Six Flags? Do you want to go to Bahamas, Jamaica cruise, whatever you want to do? But then when I go places, I go to cities, I go to the museums, the African American museums. I might go to where the slave quarters was at down in Louisiana because I need to see, like, these people was in these slave quarters. I need my children to kind of understand that too. But I think what happens is that when you look at the young folks today, maybe Maze because his daughter's 19, and you too, Mel, you know, your daughter's that young age, race is not that important to them. See, when you coming up, it was like, hey, don't. I remember first time I went down south and my aunt, a white gentleman opened the door for me, and I was like, what's up? My aunt said, don't talk to Mr. Charlie like that. And I said, Mr. Charlie, what the hell? You know, I'm thinking, where am I at? You know, color purple or something. So I just think that race is not that important. When you look at your kids, they come home and I had to ask my daughter one day, I said, do you have any Black friends? Like, hey, Megan, hey, Tristan, hey, Courtney. I was like, where the Black kids at?
Yeah, you know, maybe we should stay here a little bit about what does Blackness mean, right? Before we do that, I see an Annette Garden here. Apologies for destroying the name. I see you requesting to come on. If you could camera up, I would love to see you, and then maybe bring you in to see if you have something you want to share or pose a question.
That's my buddy, Brother Jones. That's my buddy. Ornette. That's my buddy.
Annette?
Ornette.
Okay. Yeah. I got glasses on, still couldn't read that. Ornette, if you want to come on in, you don't have to stay on camera, but at least let me see you. It's interesting, y'all, that your children, let me answer the question first. One of the cultural things that I did was I gave them a cultural name, right? And our names of our children, you know, it's the first thing you give them. It also represents them, you know, in spaces beyond the home. Hopefully your children's names have symbolism, they have honor, or they're a part of traditional family naming processes. But something I'd invite y'all to consider, if you want culture to be prominently featured every time they hear the roll call, or they look at their license, or they look at a certificate of some sort, consider a cultural name. So all of my kids have the name Teray, right? So they all have, for example, Elias Timothy Teray Jones, Ahmad Malik Teray Jones, Emil Joshua Teray Jones, right? Now, my wife and I don't have that. I should have done that. But we put a cultural name, Teray, to honor both Stokely Carmichael, Sekou Touré, but also in our background is a Blackness and a Frenchness, and Touré is actually a derivative of French colonization of all things. But we put that in their name so that it would always sort of be ever present. And then, you know, through working in college settings and being invited to speak, particularly within Black spaces, I always kind of had them at the feet kind of earlier growing up. But I will say this, y'all. I think they feel that they didn't get a rich cultural experience. You know, and then maybe that there's a class nuance to that. But they one of them kind of came to me in a funny kind of way, said, Dad, you didn't hit me to culture. Because what I think happened when he got in college and got around a whole crew of Black folk, he realized he didn't have the cultural currency. He didn't have the movies, the music, the certain kind of inferences that were important for intercultural Black talk. Now, they had some of that. They were invited to do some of that, but where they didn't have interest before, now they're like, man, Dad, you should have You should have sat me down and taught me Rapper's Delight and showed me all these kinds of movies. And perhaps I should have, right? Perhaps I should have. Anyone want to add to that before we bring in Arnett? We're bringing in Arnett in. All right.
I was going to say, Brother Jones, if I could kind of connect what you just said with what Dr. Eccles said. So it's not important, but it is, right? You mentioned some statistics at the beginning. A lot of those statistics are in place due to our position in this country because of the color of our skin. So while our youth or the younger generation don't necessarily see it as an immediate or a prevalent issue, they're still living within that issue just because they have color in their skin, right? So part of the challenge is trying to, like you say, raising our awareness, but then trying to get them to understand the issue. Just a general example that we hear sometimes: you can do all the right things, have the right job, wear the right clothes, be a celebrity in status and class, but you can still get stopped for driving while black. And if that police officer doesn't recognize who you are, you're going to be treated as a black person.
Hey, Brother Jones, look, it's something funny. I just want to tell you, I know you need to move on. I just want to tell you something funny that made me think of something. So my daughter, man, I sent her, Ornette and Mel know, I sent her to PWI High School, best all-girls high school in Northeast Ohio. I said, I'm doing something, she gonna go to Brown or Harvard because she's smart as a whip. So she goes on to do her thing. She's working in Chicago. She at a university. She get an interview and she goes down to work at Clark Atlanta. So when she get out, I say, let's talk about this first. Clark Atlanta, you surrounded by Spelman and Morris Brown. I said, you sure you want to do this? Dad, I want to do it. I know what I can do. She get down there and she was not prepared. She was not prepared to be at Clark Atlanta. He called him back in Chicago and said, is my job still available? Wow. Dad on the way with the moving truck. I'll come get you. So that was funny you said that, because sometimes we don't prepare them to be in those spaces like that. We want to send them off to the good school with the good kids, and they miss some of that, right? So it's kind of awkward. It's kind of funny you said that.
No, I love the imitation of your daughter. You got a pitch perfect there, but no, that's an intro. I need to do a whole show on that sort of blackness in the modern era. The importance of it, how children see it. What are the competing factors, and one might have an entrenched cultural groundedness, but a broader view of identity, right? But as Mays talked about, you may have your worldview, but you walk through the world and are at certain times and circumstances vulnerable to the raceness of other people's ideology. But I'll kind of transition this, and then we'll kind of see if Ornette has something he wants to contribute. But I will say this: I think our children have different experiences, especially if we make choices based upon where to live or economic kinds of choices, educational kinds of institutions. But I've always seen, even in young people that I work with, they eventually will cycle back to curiosity. They'll cycle back to a black curiosity. And a lot of times that'll revitalize itself in the college spaces or post-high school spaces. And then it might revitalize themselves when they're thinking about careers, organizations, and relationships. And they realize that, I'm a little behind in my cultural IQ. Nonetheless, Ornette, how are you, sir?
I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself?
Good. I hear you're a friend of Dr. Eccles, right?
I am. I'm a friend of Dr. Eccles. He had sent me a text message that you guys were having a show, and he said he was emailing it to me, so I was trying to get it on my computer, and I'm working with this laptop, and it's actually my job's laptop, so it gave me a blocker, so it wouldn't allow me to go to the site. So I said, let me get creative here. So I kept going back and forth, and I said, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna put it in on my phone. I said, these iPhones, this is what they're good for. Yeah. So that allowed me to jump in, man. And, I'm happy to be here, just hear a positive conversation and be a part of something that's uplifting and, engaging for us as African Americans. Because oftentimes these type of conversations, well, I'm not going to say they don't happen, but they don't happen enough. How about that?
Right. And to your point, Arnett, that's why we created this, right? To have some conversation initially with our sons, but also to broaden that up to a community of other men. Just as is evident today, Mays and I go way back some years, but everyone else on the panel I've not had a chance to sort of chop and vibe with, and that's important for me personally. It feeds my own soul, and I think I'm not alone in that. So, brother, is there any comment you want to make or a question you want to speak on that you heard, or you just kind of chime in on the next series?
Well, the one that you guys mentioned about your kids with their curiosity, and I think it is just the fact of, from just my own experiences, it's like it looms out there. So at some point, they're going to reach out and kind of see what's going on with it. No matter how long you try to prevent them or you try to send them another route, they're going to reach in. And I was just thinking the other day about my kids, is that, man, I remember for years, I'd be like, oh man, you can't listen to rap music. You're going to listen to Toon Disney. I don't listen to that stuff in the car with them around. You're going to do this and do that.
Right.
Man, I just came back from Atlanta visiting my daughters, and my son was down there for a work conference. And, that's what they listen to. They listen to hip hop music. Mm-hmm. And it just made me think about that. I literally just thought about that the other day, because I was like, oh man, you guys can't listen to this. It's too much profanity, too much of this. Some of the music is derogatory, because they had switched up from the Fight to Power, Public Enemy, to this new era. They was talking about chains and women and misogynistic ways and all of this. So I was like, man, I don't want my kids getting this into their airwaves and just kind of send them down the wrong road at a young age, man. And sooner or later, it's just that curiosity, man. It's something about just your roots, I guess, where you need to find out where they come from and how to better understand it and be a part of it. It's a lot of intrigue there. A lot of intrigue.
Sometimes I take a ride with Anthony and he make me uncomfortable. I be like, hey, I can't, let me out. I can't ride with you. Listen to all this. And he make me uncomfortable.
No, you're absolutely correct, because my daughter, she's 23 now, and my oldest daughter she's 23, and she's putting on the, she wants to put the aux cord in. She wants the auxiliary cord. I'm just listening to talk radio. Sports is WCPN. All I'm listening to is just that. I'm an old guy. I listen to talk radio all the time. I want to hear people talking. I want a conversation. I want to get as much information as I can about this crazy world we live in. And they're like, oh, Dad, let's put this in. So they put their stuff in and program the Bluetooth, the dashboard. And I'm like, oh, you sure? Did you just hear that lyric? Did you just hear that word?
But Orne, let's stay there, y'all. Let's stay there. There's always an intergenerational dynamic, right? I imagine our parents listened to what we were listening to and like, what the hell is wrong with you and your generation, right? So I'm going to accept there's elements of that. But should we censor, for lack of a better term, what our children listen to, or should we have a hypersensitivity to what they listen to? Maybe. And what is a way to counterbalance what young people want to listen to? Thoughts there?
Brother Jones, you can pick on somebody to answer the question, but before you do it, I just want to make sure I got it in the right context. I gave a presentation about intergenerationality, and it's interesting because it's like, hey, you're a baby boomer, you're a Gen X, you're Generation Y, Z. You gotta know who you're talking to. What generation are you talking to first?
I totally agree.
That's a great point. That's a great point. It's important that we stay authentic to ourselves and that we protect our babies literally and what their ears are, right? But that's a big wave to try to manage. So should we regulate it, discourage it, censor it, or counter it?
I would say, well, you want me to chime in? I don't know if you're gonna call on someone.
Go ahead, brother. Go ahead.
What I always try to do is I try to just educate my kids on it. And that's the kids that I work with at high school, or the kids that I coach, is because for me, I think that they're going to listen to it anyway. So it's best to educate them and explain to them the reality and the fiction and nonfiction that's going on in the lyrics. And then also give them a moment of reflection. Is this something the way you want to be talked to? This something the way you want to be treated, and so forth. So I think that the education piece for me is important, because if you say no, that means yes anyway. So you try to take that and then you try to put them in a position where they can be well informed. So at that point, like we just talked about the curiosity, that will kind of allow them to still have the curiosity, but then you'll give them a foundation.
Right.
And I think that that's something for them to have a point of reference when they go back. And I know I would do that a lot when they start listening to Jay-Z and all those guys. Say, hey, man, you got to realize these guys just talking, man. They just talking. They just talking. Some of it may be real, but the majority of that isn't. And then how do you fit in with that? So that's kind of my perspective on that.
No, but we'll continue on with that. For those of you all just joining in or been here for a while, thank you guys so much. Please add any comments or questions that you might have. We love to hear your voice. At the moment, we're talking about sort of music as a contemporary choice that young people make. But as fathers, we have reactions to it, right? What should we do? Should we discourage it? Should we ban it? Should we censor it? Or should we counter it in some kind of way? Other thoughts on that from either Mel or Mays?
I think for me, I negotiated. Because even when I look at my kids, I look at my grandkids, they can sing some Marvin Gaye, they can sing some Al Green, but they also sing that other stuff. But when they look at their grandma, she sing that other stuff too. So for me, it's negotiating the music. Now we do try to keep the radio edited versions of the songs that they're going to listen to if they're going to be around me. But we try to definitely negotiate the music that's being played. If you come into my parties or something like that, my kids already know it's going to be an old school jam. So. None of that old crazy hip hop crap. We gonna listen to what Pops grew up on. We gonna listen to some New Jack Swing. We gonna, we gonna go old school. Even my mama tapping her feet for some of the stuff that she grew us up on. So, and they understand that and they're okay with that. If we're taking a ride in the car, again, we're negotiating. Okay. I'll find some interest in your radio edited versions of stuff. But my kids have a very broad view of listening. They like a lot of different music. I'm liable to be listening to some Demi Lovato or some bluegrass or some stuff that I'm thinking like, what the hell is this? It's not rap. It's not so. And again, I think that was the exposure of different people, the exposure of different friends. I think we just negotiated.
No, Mel, I would absolutely agree. I don't personally believe in censorship. I think like O talked about, that actually means yes in that regard. But, I always like to say there's two primary educational labs in families, and that's the dinner table and the car ride, right? Because we have them as captive audiences. And I think it's healthy for them to certainly be exposed to your playlist, kind of what you jam to. And I have found that they like it. They enjoy, as you talked about, multiple generations of music. They like diversity beyond just R&B, neo soul, hip hop. And then if they then have a chance to put on their piece, it does two things for me. One is it gives me a sense of what they're listening to, right? It gives me a sense of what themes. For example, there was a lot of death themes recently in hip hop, drug culture and overdose and very, very melodic kinds of experiences. And that gave me a chance to pulse check with my daughter, just around, what does this music mean to you? Just to explore that a little bit. And I think if you can say, hey, I understand you got your own vibe and like what you listen to, it then opens up the door, not for a rigid ownership as a form of rebellion, but just this is kind of what I head bop to. This is what I like. This is what's contemporary. And at the same time, just like you're open to what I'm listening to, I'm open to what you're listening to. Mays, as the youngest man on the panel, what's your thoughts?
Again, this is such a multifaceted discussion. I find myself walking a thin line on any given day, as a collective, ask the question, can we and should we, when will we do better in regards to the imagery that we produce and put out there for public consumption?
Yeah.
And and then on the flip side, like you just mentioned, there's music that has that beat, the lyrical cadence, captures you, and you find yourself shouting and rocking, regardless of the misogynistic message, so.
Right.
It's a challenge, but relating it back to the kids or the youth, like you guys said, I think it's important to experience what they are wanting and choosing to listen to, because you can see where they're at, and then afterwards, when you have that rapport, right? What I listen to, I'm acknowledging and respecting where you're at with what you want to listen to. Let's have if they're old enough, let's have a mature conversation about it. This is why I wouldn't choose this to listen to, or ask the question, why do you, or what do you pay attention when you're listening to this? Are you actually hearing the lyrics? Or are you just bobbing your head? It's a whole different conversation when you ask those questions.
No, powerful. Anyone else want to get in on that? All right, beautiful family. We are getting close to the time frame. I do have one last question that I want to ask the men to kind of close out with. But again, I want to say a special thank you to you all out there in Facebook Live, YouTube, and LinkedIn land. It's tremendously joyful to spend some time on a Sunday with men having critically important conversations, but it's also intentional. It is my hope that young men, aspiring fathers, or fathers that just need a community will join. You all can help us out. You can go over to the YouTube J4 Conversations. You can like the show. You can comment. But more importantly, if you can let another dad know. Thank you to Dr. Eccles. He let two men know that are actually a part of the show. But if fathers are going to be better, we need a community of fathers. And so to close us out, and I'll go Mays with you, Dr. Eccles, and Annette, and then Mel, give you the last thoughts. You all have had personal joys associated with fathers. However, 51% of our babies, typically a father, not exclusively, is not present, and that is a problem. What guidance do you have perhaps for a 20-year-old young man that's in the boxes here, who knows what they think about condom culture? There's this element called raw dog, where people are choosing to have sex without a condom, logically understanding that they can produce a child, but often willing to still take that risk. Men only have two forms of precaution. That is abstinence or condoms. This is the audience that I really want to talk to. So to close us out, Mays, what are your thoughts? What are comments or guidance, or words of encouragement that you might have for some young men listening in?
That's a great question, and very, very important. I think on the topic of protection, it is utmost. There's not only we were talking about bringing a child into the world, but all the other health risks that go along with that. But I think from my perspective, there's a conversation or a point to be made prior to that, and that's the intentionality that you're bringing into the relationship to begin with. And again, depending on people's spirituality or their traditional backgrounds, they might have varying viewpoints, but I think it's important when we're talking about being with somebody intimately that we address the pros and cons of casually becoming intimate with somebody without the forethought of what is this relationship supposed to mean, and what does it look like, not only immediately, but what does it look like 9 months later if that were to happen, and beyond that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So any last thoughts there, Mays? You're good. I really appreciate you coming on, brother.
Thank you.
Yes, indeed. Let's go. Talk to us. Any last thoughts around for the young audience that might be listening in as a father yourself?
Yeah, I would certainly think that, the first thing you want to think about is as a parent, before you become a parent, is about becoming a parent. Me working with so many young adults, and I see young kids in high school becoming pregnant and young girls and young guys is really try to educate them just on the entire relationship piece and what that entails, because when you start crossing certain lines, there's no point of return. And I think a lot of children don't understand that, because they can only see as far as they are. So oftentimes, and what they see is, okay, well, I'm trying to have this fun, I'm trying to have this moment, but they don't know that moment could potentially last forever.
Right.
One way or another, for whether it's with dealing with your health or it's dealing with bringing another human being into this world. So I think that oftentimes that's something that I always try to press upon them, because, and I'm just going to give a little personal disclosure, is that I think about this for myself, and I talk to some of the friends I know from high school, is that, man, sometimes the good Lord is throwing you a blessing when he blocking things.
Yeah.
You don't realize that,
Yep.
because when you're a kid at 15, 16, 17, you don't understand what you're doing, man. You don't understand that you're potentially about to have a baby. You're about to make someone pregnant. You think you're having fun.
Yeah.
But it's about to get real serious for you. And you're not prepared for that. You're not prepared for that. And I think that that's one of the things that we really have to continue to educate kids with, because even more so now, because like I said, I work with youth, even more so now, is that kids are exposed to so much more. They're exposed. Like before, you might be able to sneak into the basement and your dad may have a Playboy or a Jet magazine. When you saw somebody with a Jet, that was a big deal. You saw the centerfold of a Jet, man, you go on Instagram, it's Jet magazines every day, all day. You go on to your phone, kids know, a lot of kids, they know about porn sites. They know about all this sort of stuff. Man, I work at a high school. These young kids know about porn sites at 14, 15 years old. They know so much. They're exposed to so much more information, so much more stuff out here. But I think the back side of that piece is they're not understanding the consequences that come along with it. They're not understanding the responsibilities that come along with it. So they're only seeing it as, okay, this is what adults do. This is fun. This is all of this sort of stuff. They have something in the student code of conduct. Student code of conduct is for public affection and public touching, whether consent or non-consensual, as being inappropriate. Man, there wasn't nothing like that. Never out in high school when we came. Excuse my grammar, excuse any of that. Those things weren't even a thought when we were in high school. Those things weren't a thought. If you maybe snuck in the back hallway and received a kiss right before practice, that was a big deal. That was a huge deal. This is somebody walking a student to class, holding hands, touching them inappropriately, may kiss them, and the girls are fine with it. Or we sitting in the cafeteria, you have a girl trying to sit on another girl's lap, or trying to sit on another guy, trying to sit on a guy's lap. These things are common. These are common. When you're dealing with some of the teenagers that I work with in inner city Cleveland, and I imagine it's inner city New York, inner city Detroit, et cetera, so forth and so on. So those are commonplace things. So I think that most kids aren't aware of everything that goes into it. So I would say just continue. The key word is education, educating them on what this can lead and what this is all about. And the kids, of course, they're going to still make the decisions that they make and make the choices that they make, but at least you're arming them with information.
Oh, you're absolutely right. You know, I think a whole show could be devoted to, you know, sort of sexual innocence, discovery, beauty, and complexity, you know, for today's generation. You're right. And I'm gonna go to you, Dr. Eccles, but a 17-year-old can be exposed to more porn in one day than our generation can be exposed to in a lifetime. And that does something psychologically. So we as fathers, we definitely got to have the conversation, not just around porn, but around condoms. We have to have it early. We have to have it assertively. And we have to make sure they have them on them all the time. Dr. Eccles, your last thoughts?
Yes, sir. Brother Jones, Brother Ornette and I, we do this every day. We just do it amongst me and him. So we talk about this every day. So he's right about that in the school he worked at and so forth and so on. But, you know, for me, I feel like, you know, we all these brothers on the stage today, hell of a fathers, hell of a stories. They're there for their daughters, they're there for their sons. you got to turn the page. There's another side of this that we're not seeing, and I don't know, it's not right for this conversation, but I just want to just leave it in everybody's mindset is that everybody doesn't have what this collective is offering. And I say that to say, you know, my grandmother always used to say, you know, trouble is easy to get into, but it's hard to get out of. And so what I mean is that you have these young girls having babies. We don't want them to be trapped in the cycle of poverty. Because they do get trapped in there and they have to come home and they need our assistance to help them get out of that because they didn't brought a little one home. For the guys, you know, I work a lot in our prison in Cleveland. And I'm gonna be honest, it's mostly us in there. And so I just say that we need to still have, you know, this mentorship of these young men, because for the ones that don't have Brother Mays and Mel and Brother Jones, they can easily fall into that trouble that Ornette is talking about, because it's out there on the street and it's just waiting for them. If we don't educate them, the street's going to educate them, right? And so they're going to be in our correctional system sooner or later if they don't make great choices. So I just end by saying, you know, I think it's important that we instill and continue. I have mentors. They're younger than me, but I'm a lifelong learner. So I learn from them. I learn all the time. And I think we should continue to have that mentorship. And as fathers, you need to understand the sincerity of it. This is a serious matter also, but relish in the joy of it, because hey, right now I'm an empty nester. I'm bored as hell. I wish I had a kid. I'm bored as hell. So I want to go to a football game. I go to basketball. I call Ornette all the time, say, hey, want to go to basketball game with me? You know, he coaching his own thing. I'm like, I ain't got nobody to go to game with. I used to have that with my son, but now I'm an empty nester. So I think just relish in the joy of it, but continue to have mentorship, because they can become wayward very easily.
No, wonderfully said, Dr. Echols. Let me underscore again, thank you so much for your early interest in the show and for coming on and commenting and for joining me today and bringing some of your people with you. So thank you so much, Dr. Echols. But absolutely, Dr. Echols underscores the importance of fathers, right? There's a correlation between crime, incarceration, and fatherhood. There's a correlation between educational attainment and fatherhood. And so we got to fight for our fatherhood status to literally own the moment, but we're also protecting an uncertain future. So it's more than just about our own emotion, as Mays talked about. We got to definitely have connections with the person we produce the child with. Mel, last word is yours, and then I'll close us out.
All right. Thank you, man. Thank you so much. I think just having that hard conversation. For me, when I'm talking to these young people, I'm asking them, are you truly ready to be a father? Because the moment you choose sex, you're ready to be a father. Whether you're wearing a condom, whether you're going raw, you're choosing to be a father. And if you have that in your mind, because a condom can break, a condom can go through all different things. So the moment you choose to lay down with this young lady, you're choosing to be a father. And are you ready for that? I do a piece with them where I give them a collective amount of this fake money.
Yeah.
And I tell them, okay, you just laid down with Terry over here, so we got to deduct some money, because now you know it's possible you got to go get a pregnancy test. So now all of this money is yours in this bank account. But the moment you choose to have a kid, that money no longer becomes yours, because now you got to take care of this kid. So we're going to start saving money for you from the time you're born, and we're going to give it to you at 18. But if you choose to have a kid anywhere between now and 18, that money no longer is yours. So if we start to show them where this can become a financial disaster for them in choosing to have sex, are you prepared to be with this person for the rest of your life, either directly or indirectly? Look across at her, make sure, because the moment you lay down with her, she's in your life forever, because there's a strong possibility that you could have a baby with her. Just trying to have those real conversations, and putting it in a tense and an understanding that they can relate to, because then they could never come back and say they weren't at least armed with some knowledge. All we can do is arm them with the knowledge. After that, then they at least making a conscious decision. And that puts them ahead of a lot of times. If we didn't have these conversations, how many of us really had those hard conversations? How many people had those hard conversations with us? I didn't have a dad in my life. So what I learned from the streets was, yeah, you hit it, man. Go hit that.
Yeah.
Go get that.
Yep.
So if I followed that mentality and that rationale, I would have had kids far earlier than what I did. Nothing would have been planned.
Right.
But knowing the importance of waiting, knowing the importance of, hey, strapping up, at least that's going to give you some protection. But still understanding you could be a dad even with that taking place. So just giving them that hard conversation so that they're making informed decisions.
Mel, spoken like a true veteran in the game. Much respect for the work that you're doing in the dad space. Much respect for what everyone is doing. I really want to thank you, gentlemen, for coming in. It's been a hell of an hour and a half or so. It's been some great content. I hope that you guys will continue to be a part of these conversations, either in the panel or in the boxes as we kind of go forward. I have some last thoughts for the group, but I'm gonna drop you guys down if that's all right. Big Mays, thank you so much, brother.
That was good. Have a good night. Thank you for having me.
You too, O. Dr. Nick Eccles, thank you so much, brother. Big Mel, thank you so much. All right, Big O, let me drop you down. All right. Beautiful J4 community, thank you guys. Thank you. This is the second Dad's Talk show that we did. It is so warming to have men across the nation find some value, decide to get together at varying stages of life, whether they are high school, college, children, no children, curious about the subject of fatherhood, regardless of where they are. Men need communities of men. Fathers need communities of father. We need them for our own well-being. We need them for personal example, and we need them for a cycle of rejuvenation, because the cycle of fatherhood ebbs and flows as it does for all parents. We have high moments, we have uncertain moments, we have self-doubt. That is a part of the ecology of being a father. Men need confidants, we need community, and this space can play that particular part. Well, I need your help, y'all. I need your help. If you're finding value in this, share with a father, share with a young father, share with a young person who's considering being a father, so that we can grow the community, get additional voices in here, and have intergenerational dialogue, because there's nothing more important to a grown human being's circumstances, good, bad, or indifferent. There's nothing more critical to the impact of that other than the home by which they are raised in, whether that's a two-parent home or a single-parent home. But undeniably intricate to that is the space, the presence, and the role of the father. The role of the father is critical. 51% of our babies are born to single-parent homes, beautiful families. That's a problem. So if you see value and want to contribute to at least speaking to that, consider becoming a part of the J4 community. On that note, thank you guys so much. J4 Conversations, love, love, love. Men, stay in there. I'll come to you in a minute. Y'all take care. Thank you for rolling with us on a Sunday.